welcome everyone to the inaugural Perpetua Summer Sessions. And we've got John Willbanks and Chris Moe, co-founders of Cartograph. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining. What's Cartograph and why are you guys awesome?
Thanks for having us.
Great to be here. We're Cartograph, and we're an Amazon-focused e-commerce agency that specializes in organic and natural CPG brands. So we work and represent on Amazon brands like Lily's, Justin's, Birchbenders, Country Archer, Milk Bar, Four Sigmatic, and others. Have been early and now longtime partners of the amazing team at Perpetua, who have really leveled up and elevated our advertising game. And so we really enjoy continually working on the advertising side of the house to bring efficient customer acquisition and growth to our clients. As an agency, we also integrate with our clients' businesses in different ways from most Amazon agencies. So in addition to the agency work, advertising content, we do a lot of work upstream in 3PL management, price pack architecture, supply chain optimization and planning, pricing and margin management, product development, et cetera. And really excited to be here today to talk about some of our observations and experiences on Amazon for DTC oriented brands.
Cool. So you're basically jack of all trades when it comes to Amazon for every single one of your clients.
Yeah, very strong outsourced generalist and essentially act as outsourced GMs for the Amazon channel.
Fun. So you mentioned some
jack of all trades, but still pretty narrow, right? You know,
within
we're
the
focused,
Amazon
and actually
marketplace.
that's one of our strengths. Yeah, Amazon only, and really consumables and CPG, and really understanding what it takes to sell lower ASP items that people buy frequently. And you think about actual consumption. It's not something that you have in your house. It's something that you go through and then buy it again.
Cool. So you mentioned some awesome brands that a lot of people are very familiar with. If you go through the rows and aisles of a Whole Foods, you can basically see the Cartograph client base. It's interesting. When does a brand typically come to you in the life cycle of their business?
Yeah, I would say we have a few models of clients, but I think we really love and certainly specialize in standing up promising early stage startups. We love to see that there's a proof of concept in the market. $1 million trailing 12-month sales is a pretty good signal that I think it's time to look at launching aggressively and investing on Amazon. But we work with companies at all sizes. I mean, we work with $100 million a year companies that have brought us in to turn around their business or elevate their execution. And then we work with even larger companies that have already exited and are in-house in a portfolio for some of the big multinationals. So we work at all scales, but we really love working with startups. It's part of our culture. It's really cool that we get to help build and sell products that we believe in, that we think are healthier for the planet and for the world, and to work with really passionate entrepreneurs in the process.
Cool.
One way we talk about our segmentation of the brands is there's kind of like a 2x2. So there's we have retail native brands, so brands that really launch to be in stores, and these are a lot of the core grocery brands that we work with. And so for a lot of those, it's usually when you've got some healthy distribution, usually a couple $1 million in sales across your whole brand. And then there's digital native brands, which are brands that really were built around digital acquisition. And so those two buckets kind of separate the DNA of these two brands, if they're like really e-commerce minded, or they're really know how to do consumer products in the traditional sense. And then underneath both of those, there's kind of two different types of clients, which are those already on Amazon who have done some work there and launched their business and are looking to take it to the next level, and those who haven't done it yet and so are thinking, okay, what do I have to worry about or think about when I launch on Amazon?
Well, so let's go with that one quadrant of e-commerce first brands that aren't on Amazon. When should they, maybe it's from a sales perspective, maybe from a capital perspective, maybe that might be from a sophistication of product portfolio perspective, but when should they start to think about jumping onto Amazon, and at what point do they typically approach you?
Yeah, I think it varies. What we usually recommend is once you have a pretty good sense for product market fit, is a good time to get on Amazon. What you really want to do is make sure you have a product and you know how to tell the story and you know who it's for and who you want to sell it for. So for some brands, this can be as early as, a few months after launch, or it could be, a little bit later once they've tested and iterated and kind of refined their product and their formulation. The biggest thing that we say is, what you don't want to do is you don't want to launch too early when you're not sure that your product is something that your customers really love, and then end up with reviews that you're not happy with that kind of follow you around to the life cycle of your product. But generally speaking, we say launch pretty early. From day one, if someone sees your product on an ad on Instagram or any other social channel, a good portion of those people are going to go to Amazon and search that product and see if they can find more information and see some reviews about it.
Cool. So a brand comes to you. What then becomes the crash course or playbook, whether it be someone that's already on Amazon, someone that's new to Amazon? How do you think about Amazon readiness for an entirely new Cartograph client?
John, why don't you?
Good question. Sure. So, we look at a few things, and some brands are already, locked and loaded with e-commerce and Amazon friendly products, and it's a really quick launch. And sometimes we're doing a lot of upstream work to really get them prepped. But
what does upstream mean for someone like me that doesn't know what you're referring to by upstream?
Sure. So in packaging configuration, is the product coming off the line from a co-manufacturer in a size that's conducive to Amazon? I mean, one of the first things we look at validating is the product, are the product dimensions and price points optimized for the unique unit margin economics of the Amazon channel? There are certain size and weight thresholds that can save, eliminate really significant cost in shipping and fulfillment. There are certain price points that can cause Amazon to drop the selling and referral fees that they commission. And because we're working in, consumer packaged goods specifically, getting this mix right early on is really important. So you think about the classic challenge of a $5 1 pound pouch of organic pancake mix. That works on a brick and mortar shelf, but it's really difficult to sell a 1 pound item for $5 on Amazon because somebody has to absorb that cost of free 1-day Prime shipping. And so a lot of the work we do is how do we get that product architecture to make sense not only for the margin economics of the Amazon channel, but also present a compelling value proposition to the customer. So the obvious answer might be, just sell a multi-pack, sell your master pack. But how many people want to buy 6 pounds of pancake mix at once? So we're working and saying, okay, do we launch, is a 3-piece variety pack our hero? Is it a 3-pack? Do we want to launch a custom sized product coming straight off the line in a size that's optimized for Amazon? And then, it really helps us beyond that sort of work. We want to make sure that we've got our clients stood up with the right logistics partners, that we've got good 3PL capabilities to be able to do kitting, repack work, who know Amazon's processes, who can integrate at an API or an EDI level so that we're not having to process orders and replenishment by hand. And we really want to build that machine from day one for scale. Makes it a lot easier to manage and a lot easier for our clients to grow. And it really helps when clients come to us as well, brands that have built some brand equity and some brand awareness, especially if they're in a competitive category. Customers, if given the option to purchase a product on a DTC site and on Amazon, are significantly more likely to make any purchase than if just presented with DTC or even one or the other. So having some existing brand equity is really great. And then I think understanding, as Chris said, the product market fit, understanding their customers, so that gives us, we do our keyword research, we do our competitive benchmarking and landscaping, but it really helps us when our customers or when our clients are crystal clear on who their customers are. And that helps us really triangulate our attack vectors for the market.
Cool. Lot to unbundle there, John. Can I ask, so, everyone obviously wants to create packaging to maximize profits, but there's obviously a fine balance in determining the right price for that a consumer would want to convert on that. While you set up a packaging infrastructure for profitability, how do you think about pricing a product? Like, is there a sweet spot for a CPG brand that was selling a single unit for $5 and is now coming into a bulk package on Amazon that maximizes for both conversion rate and profits?
Yeah, absolutely. Chris has done some great work here and some publishing recently on this topic.
Yeah, so yeah, like John mentioned, there's a lot of work that goes into before you even get started on the product and thinking what's the right product. And it kind of comes from two directions, which John mentioned. On the grocery side, most grocery items are pretty cheap, right? You go walk in the grocery store, most items are $3 to $5. And that just doesn't really work in e-commerce because you have to pay for shipping somehow and you have to pay some platform fees. And then conversely, if you're a digital native brand, most of the time you're priced $30 plus because you got to pay for digital acquisition on a channel like Facebook, which is pretty expensive these days. And so you come to Amazon and the right answer is usually somewhere in the middle there. We generally shoot for a $10 to $15 item. That's usually about as low as we can push it while still being profitable. And then we really try to find an offer, if it's possible, an offer where you can ship it for less than a pound. It's actually 12 ounces gross weight is the magic number where you hit that step function in shipping weight on Amazon, where you're able to be most profitable. But yeah, switching from even a $30 offer to a $20 offer to a $10 to $15 offer. We've done this a number of times, and your velocities, they multiply with that lower offer.
Yeah, for sure. And then still within this getting set up phase, how should a D2C brand that's just getting started on Amazon think about not wanting to cannibalize their D2C sales by adding this additional channel? Like, of course, people are searching on Amazon, and of course I can get incremental sales on Amazon. But many people say Amazon is a little bit like a drug in that you start to get addicted to those sales, and those sales might start to cannibalize the sales that one used to have on D2C, especially as a brand starts to build. How do you guys communicate that very natural fear to the clients that you have?
So there's two assumptions in that question that I want to address before we even address it. So one is the concept of cannibalization, which implies that you are getting lower quality sales or less margins. And that's not always necessarily true. If you do a side-by-side of your total customer acquisition cost of Amazon versus D2C, because of the amount of organic sales that you can get from Amazon and the lower cost of acquisition, sometimes it's actually not a margin dilutive channel. And then the other assumption is that the mindset that it's like one or the other. We actually really try to push our clients to think of the two channels as integrated, because you're inevitably paying for, anytime you advertise or do brand awareness, you're actually paying for traffic on both. So one thing that we'll say is there's a Venn diagram of internet shoppers. One circle is those who buy on direct-to-consumer websites, and one circle is people who buy on Amazon websites. And the crossover of the two actually isn't all that large. And so people are very committed to the way that they shop. They might not be as comfortable putting their credit card on a new website or dealing with like a different kind of shipping. So one of the things that we try to push our clients to think about is, if you have a Facebook ad, 100 people look at it. Some portion of them will click on it. Some people will just look on it and then go to Amazon. And so thinking of that as like integrated ROI on spend, you actually should do an ROI calculation on how many sales you're getting from your Facebook ads to your direct-to-consumer site, plus how much Amazon sales you're driving from that spend.
Right. And I'm sure you can also track branded searches as an example on Amazon when you're running a brand awareness Facebook campaign to be able to measure that halo effect. Really
Share of voice.
interesting.
Oh, I think maybe two other points to add in that question. About cannibalization risk with Amazon. In addition to, I think, often more favorable customer acquisition costs, when you look at the total cost of fulfillment and Amazon's platform fees, their strength as their competitive advantage as a fulfillment provider really shines. So on a $15 item, you as a brand are going to pay Amazon combined in platform fees and fulfillment for them to pick, pack, and ship your item with 1-day prime shipping about $4.50. If you're trying to do that through your own DTC website, you can't even buy shipping for that price, much less the labor or the materials. So Amazon, in a sense, in many cases, pays for itself through the efficiencies that the platform provides. For many of our clients, is actually more profitable than a sale through their DTC site. So that's, I think, one point to consider. And then the second, when you're comping the two channels, obviously a huge advantage of DTC is the ability to really own the relationship with your brands, the communications, which is really powerful. But it lacks something that you get on Amazon, which is that Amazon is a momentum-based platform. It's a king of the hill search algorithm, and sales beget sales. And so when you are driving sales on Amazon, your product will naturally climb higher and higher in organic search rankings. And once a product is organically ranked on page 1 of search results, it's immensely valuable. And there's this really valuable halo of unsubsidized organic sales that happen as a result of that. You don't get that momentum lift driving products to your DTC site. And I mean, maybe some indirect results in, Google ranking, but not nearly as powerful.
Yeah, you touched on two really awesome subjects that I'd love to go deeper on. So let's begin with profits. So I think one thing that I find fascinating is that a lot of brands new to Amazon or a lot of smaller sellers might say stuff like, you have to just grow and not think about profits for your first year. But you guys actually have a very different approach for the brands that you take on. You think Amazon should be a profit channel immediately. How are you able to achieve that, and how are you able to kind of take those profits and coach your clients into reinvesting that into further Amazon growth and or other growth outside of Amazon?
Yeah, great question. So I think we have that margin and profitability focused philosophy kind of wired into the company because of a bias that I think I brought from my work prior to Cartograph. Before Cartograph, I built and led the first in-house Amazon team for the General Electric brand, a portfolio of about 3,000 of most of their consumer-facing products. And so this wasn't a startup that was looking to exit for some multiple. We were comping margins against the Walmarts, the Home Depots, the Costcos, and Lowe's of the world. And Amazon needed to stand on its own, in which we needed to grow, but every transaction needed to be contribution margin positive and healthily so. And so seeing and realizing that it was possible to grow with that mindset, we just kind of took it in as an assumed default in the natural food space and didn't realize until we started seeing work that our competitors were doing how rare that perspective is. So we do a few things, and we actually, for any prospective client, we do a lot of this work for free just in our diligence process. We do a pretty comprehensive analysis and build out a margin waterfall of the Amazon channel. So I think the first step is unmasking all of the cost inputs associated with Amazon. And Amazon doesn't really make this easy for you. There's a few that are really obvious, but there's a lot that are subtle and hidden. And we're not just talking about platform fees. We're talking about prep and labeling fees, 3PL fees, freight fees, advertising costs, reinvesting in price promotions, customer returns and refunds. Do you want to participate in the subscribe and save program? And these costs add up a lot. And in our diligence work, it's alarmingly common that we see brands that think that they have a really healthy business and are growing rapidly, but they're actually losing money in the channel after we account for all of these inputs. So the first thing we want to do is we want to unmask those costs. And that exercise is usually, it's both diagnostic, but very prescriptive, because we can see exactly what needs to change and what's broken with the margin economics and the price pack architecture of the offerings. And then I think the second piece that we do is, in addition to building that margin waterfall to facilitate that visibility into cost inputs and profitability proactively, we also do a look back each month. So we build out full, GAAP compliant P&Ls for the Amazon channel, where we're automating and we have data teams that are collecting all of that data and building it into one full channel P&L, so that when we're having management discussions about strategy and investment, we're able to do it not just in context of top line, but also bottom line impact. Really helps us, I think, operate at a higher and deeper level with our brands and also their finance teams.
Cool. And then once you got those profits, how do you think about reinvesting those profits into growth on Amazon?
Chris, you want to take that one?
Sure. So we actually, we consider growth as part of that original margin waterfall. So we want our budget to be self-reinforcing, so that when we say, all right, our total P&L is going to give us, 10, 20% net profit, we actually don't have to touch that anymore. It's not always the case when you launch. First few months, you might spend a little bit more, but we like to have our products profitable inclusive of advertising spend. So we generally recommend brands invest anywhere from 10 to 25% back into the Amazon channel.
And by investing back into the channel, you mean specifically within advertising?
Correct. Within Amazon advertising and promotional levers. And it actually will set that budget kind of based upon a conversation, which is generally driven by, what do you need the channel to be on a contribution margin basis? Because any brand owner needs to be thinking like, I need to get my brand to 15, 20, 25% net in order for us to get to our next stage in our growth.
Got it. And so for those initial customers that you're bringing on board, or when you begin taking over, now we're talking about growth, how do you think about investing in both advertising and other promotions? And how should a client or a brand think about allocating capital towards each mechanism of growing on Amazon?
Sure. So I think it's important to think about all of the promotional levers in the context of your types of traffic and your conversion. So really, you can kind of draw a curve of consumers, basically those who have a higher propensity to buy and will therefore be lower cost to acquire, versus those are going to be a little bit more expensive to acquire and have a little bit lower propensity to buy. So you should first make sure that you're covering all of those customers who have really good brand awareness and really good familiarity with your brand. So that means anyone who knows about your brand or your brand name, or very common terms that are very specific to your portfolio first. Those are the first most important ones to target. And generally speaking, that means sponsored product ads with branded terms. And actually, I think that also means a lot of retargeting and remarketing, because retargeting and remarketing is people who already know your brand. And so that's actually why we often turn on Amazon's DSP or their display network earlier than a lot of other players, because it's really important to own the people who know your product, because it's really hard to get people with that brand awareness.
Got it. So many people might suggest that you should begin investing in, let's call it a full funnel strategy on Amazon once you have a little bit more scale, a little bit more impressions. But effectively what you're saying is you want to use all of the levers within Amazon right from the get-go to capture that customer journey. Is that
sure.
right?
Well, let's unpack what full funnel means, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right, like full funnel. We're
talking to the right guy, man. This is the advertising company. This is what we talk about every day.
For someone to say focus on your bottom of funnel, but then not have retargeting and remarketing is kind of like it doesn't really logically make sense. Like retargeting and remarketing is bottom of funnel, and so then you can move to owning category and thinking about competitors. Which is a little bit more the consideration phase. And I think that's true mid of funnel, but like having super aggressive category of competitor pay-per-click campaigns is actually higher in the funnel than retargeting, remarketing campaigns. And I think people have just been conditioned. It was hard to turn on DSP and it was expensive to turn on DSP up until, you know, the last year. And so, but really, if you draw the funnel, that should be some of the stuff you do pretty early.
Yeah.
And calling out how much Perpetua has done too to lower our barrier of entry for Perpetua for many of our brands. I mean, historically, you know, to do DSP, we were looking at $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 minimum commitments through AMG. And, you know, with Perpetua, we can activate brands spending $10,000 a month on DSP, and in limited cases, sometimes less, to really get that data and scale. So kudos to you all for being one of the leaders in making DSP a more accessible platform for early stage brands.
Yeah, that's one thing that we definitely aspired to do in the past year, is really democratize access to the Amazon DSP. And to be honest, a lot of the impetus behind that was the two of you. So if we backtrack this a little bit about a year ago, like what excited you about the DSP, and what made you believe that this is something that all of your brands should be activating on pretty early on in the process? Or I guess, did you already answer that, Chris? Am I just getting you to regurgitate what you're saying?
No, John, I'm curious to hear your take.
Chris will probably have more depth here, but for me, there's a really obvious one for our business, which is consumables. So, I mean, the ability to remarket to existing customers. I mean, we're consumable product, and I believe really strongly when you can get somebody to buy your grocery product, your supplement product 2 times, and especially 3 times, it really becomes a habit, and that brand becomes a fixture of their lifestyle. And there's just not a really effective way to do that on the PPC side, but DSP allows us to continue to remarket to those lapsed customers, so that we make, you know, the brand a habit. It's consistently, like, I think also the highest performing bucket that we see in our ad spend. And like that one feature alone, I think makes DSP a no-brainer for any consumable brand.
Fun. So that speaks to a concept of repurchase rate on Amazon, and a formula that many DTC brands are very familiar with, which is CAC to LTV. And specifically, as you move upper funnel with the DSP, we start to talk about new to brand purchases, which are, you know, what are how much are you spending on DSP to get that first new to brand purchase? How much are you, how often is that person coming back? Do you guys have that conversation with your customers of CAC to LTV? And if so, how does that compare to the metrics that they typically see if they're driving traffic to their D2C site?
Yeah, so we do. We do have that conversation. And so, you know, in consumables, it's hard because, and the way that we operate is we try to make every unit profitable, generally speaking. So on a blended basis. So it's not super common that we're saying, okay, I'm willing to spend more than the cost of the single purchase on an acquisition with a repeat purchase, because, you know, we do run repeat purchase analytics by a cohort to help us understand the you know, how many people are coming back, how many of purchasers are repeat, you know, what is our consumption time frame. But usually, generally speaking, the margins in consumables tend to be pretty slim. So our acquisition cost is usually driven by actually our budget requirement rather than just traditional LTV, which is often calculated on revenue. We'll actually do it on like margin LTV.
Got it. Cool. A few minutes ago, you mentioned something about when to go a little bit more aggressive on category traffic, on sponsored ads, category and competitor traffic. Is there a specific time frame, whether that be number of sales, a number of reviews, a bestseller rank within a browse node, that you think it behooves a brand to start to really push the envelope on that sort of thing?
We see pretty consistently. Yeah, I mean, I think there's one prerequisite that we like to see is we see really consistently just a huge leap in conversion rates when we pass the 30 to 50 review mark. After that, there's diminishing returns, although reviews are always powerful and great. But we really work with our brands through various programs and levers to build up that review count as early as possible before we go too aggressive.
And John, let's stop there. So what are some of those things that you guys do to make sure that your customers have an awesome amount of reviews, or a foundation of reviews at the get-go?
Sure. This is a delicate issue because Amazon's policies are pretty strict on this and always changing.
I don't want to out you guys on some black hat tactics that you do.
We're decidedly not black hat. Actually, we're pretty vanilla and maybe a little gray every once in a while. I think, don't use review farms. I mean, I think that's statement number one. One thing Amazon has really done to democratize access to early reviews. So there's two programs, particularly in Seller Central, that are no-brainers for anyone launching a product. The first is the early reviewer program, which for a $60 enrollment fee, the first, whoever buys your product from Amazon Amazon will offer them a $3 gift card to leave you a review. And Amazon will keep doing that until you have your first 5 reviews. So that's an easy no-brainer. But the second lever, which is newer for Seller Central, is access to the Amazon Vine program. Vine used to only be available through Vendor Central, but through Amazon Vine, for essentially the cost of your product, you can send samples, and Amazon will send them on your behalf to 30 qualified reviewers who have been voted as helpful in their review responses by the Amazon community. And that can seed and get you to about 30 reviews. And this is especially powerful if you've got multiple items in a family. So if I've got like a classic garlic and vanilla flavor of the same product, and those items are twisted together into one family, Amazon will consolidate the number of reviews for each item into one displayed review score. So by running Vine on those 3 items, I've had to give out 90 samples of products, but it's quite low cost. I now have a count of 90 reviews that are going to display in results. I would caution, if you have a polarizing product that some people love and some people are going to hate, Vine is maybe a little bit riskier, because I think Vine reviewers have developed a little bit of a Yelp syndrome and kind of feel the need to nitpick. So make sure you've got a crowd pleaser using those programs. More broadly, there are some really reputable micro-influencer agencies that, as part of a broader engagement package, their customers will actually purchase your product on Amazon and go back and leave a legitimate review, but you're not really paying for the review, you're paying for much more, and the review is kind of a courtesy that they use to close the loop.
Got it.
But yeah, one item that, John, you touched on there that I think is really important that not everyone realizes is variation twist. Pull your products apart and have them sit separately on separate detail pages. So have separate parent ASIN. And that actually lets you qualify for a separate set of Vine reviews for each product.
So can you walk that through in detail as like an example brand? What does that mean by pulling a product apart? Like, what would be examples of 2 parent ASINs?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty simple. Say that you had, 4 flavors of soda, and they all sit on the same page. Is how many brands manage their products. For the time that you're enrolling in Vine, have them separated out. So rather than have them being on the same page, have 4 separate detail pages where each flavor exists. And then you can enroll each one of those in Vine separately. And so rather than getting 30 reviews, which is how much you get with the Vine enrollment, for the whole set, you can actually get 120 across the 4 flavors.
Cool.
And then once the reviews are in, you revariate them and twist them together back into one family under the same parent ASIN.
And do they, forgive me for being a review hacking noob here, but do the reviews then add up? If you get 4, 4, and 4, and 4, is it 16 reviews?
Yes. Once they'll be independent until you get your 30 Vine reviews, then we twist them together. And if you do 30 on 4 items, it'll display as 120 reviews.
Wow, that's very cool. I actually had no idea about that.
They're still labeled separate. So like if you go through the reviews, it'll tell you which one was for which flavor. And if your strategy changes, this is actually something that we run a lot of different strategies on, changing your variation twists. But if your strategy changes, you can pull them apart again, and the sub counts will travel with those individual flavors.
Got it. Cool. We have reviews. We spoke about conversion rate. You said 30 reviews seems to be the magic number where you can start to really go aggressive on high traffic category and competitor terms. is there a magical conversion rate that you try and maintain for all of the ad placements that you have on, or not ad placements, but the traffic that you're driving to a product detail page?
I think it varies a lot by brand.
Category.
By category and by brand.
So let's say this for emerging food brands, what's very bad, or not what's very bad, what's concerning, and what's, wow, this is exceptional.
Yeah. So there's a few metrics you should be looking at for each one of your advertising slices. So the first is click-through rate, which is of the impressions, how many people actually click on it. And so, you know, on your branded terms, your click-through rate will often be high single digits, even double-digit percentages, depending upon basically how many different offers that you have as a branded result. Now, when you get into category and competitor, I'm really happy if you have over 1% as a click-through rate. And really, you got to look at it on an individual term basis, because there are category terms that are really, really relevant to your product that you might be able to win, you know, like a significant amount of the click share and have a pretty healthy click-through rate. And then there's ones that you'll be happy to get 0.25%. And so competitor is going to be lower, generally speaking, than category two. And so like a good competitor will be, you know, if you are a fraction of a percent, so call it like 0.1% on some competitor terms, you're doing pretty well, because you're taking away consumers from that are actually looking for your competitor. John, any other thoughts on conversion or what you should look for in category?
Yeah, I think, I mean, echoing that it's really individualized based on the brand and the product offering. Obviously, brands with a lot of brand equity are going to see super high conversion. They're going to have a lot more branded search, and they're going to see really high conversion on those. So it's important, and your platform, Adam, makes it really easy to do this, but to break out branded click-through and conversion rates from our competitor and category level spend. But that can certainly, you know, brand equity can really help improve overall blended metrics. I think the other thing to consider too is, you know, how is the product differentiated from other players in the category? You know, if you're going into a category with 3 big incumbents and their product are all conventional and yours is grass-fed, and you're at a reasonably compelling price point, then like you're going to have it's going to be a lot easier for you to steal click-through and ultimately conversion from those competitors than if you're launching a plant-based protein that's the same as everybody else's plant-based protein. So lots of nuanced factors that go into it.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned there, John, that I think is one of the differences between brands is you will have a longer consideration phase when you have a higher priced item. And so this is like part of that whole, like, do you want to be in the 20s or 30s or teens in price? If you are in the 20s and 30s, and this actually brings us back to retargeting advertisement, you just see lower product detail page conversion, and you will therefore see lower click conversion from your advertising, just because people are going to click it, see that their cart is like $30 and be like, I might think about it for a day or two, or I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to shop around more because this is a bigger purchase. And so even if it's the same product, your conversion rates will be different depending upon where your price point is as well.
Cool. Getting back to the DSP, you mentioned retargeting and remarketing. To what extent do you then change the subject with a lot of your clients once they've had success in the lower funnel on DSP, mid-funnel consideration phase on high traffic category and competitor terms, and then start to think about in-market audiences at the top of funnel and driving new to brand purchases and changing the story around metrics when it's not about ROAS and ACoS, and it might be cost per detail page view? At what stage do you start to elevate that conversation with your clients, and how is it received, and how do you coach them into no longer thinking about ROAS?
So we always try to anchor our conversations on Amazon around traffic and conversion. And so if we have if we have a healthy conversion rate, which usually you have when you fill this bottom of the funnel, you're probably capping out on traffic. And so then what you need to do is you need to start filling your traffic funnel with probably it's going to be a little bit less converting traffic because they know your product. They're not as well acquainted with it. They might just be shopping around. They might not even be interested in it yet. And so what you start to do is you start to fill that traffic funnel with people who see your detail page once. And so you have to actually think of that traffic as not a one-time thing. Like if someone visits your detail page and they don't convert when they're in that more higher top part of the funnel, isn't the end of the journey, because then they get into your retargeting funnel. And, especially if you're a product that requires some degree of education, is a little bit more expensive, or is a substitute, maybe people have to deplete the other stuff that they have, then getting them into their retargeting is actually when you'll get a lot of them to convert. So it's actually a multi-phase, and that top of funnel is a lot of times feeding the later portions of DSP.
Cool. Are there challenges? Yeah, go ahead, John.
Calling out too, when we look at that, top of funnel segment-based prospecting, that I think the new opportunities and kind of the democratization of OTT are really compelling. It's something we're still exploring and leaning into, but I mean, compared to other, video platforms, the ability to advertise on Amazon's, IMDb TV and ad-supported Prime TV networks, the ability to advertise on, Kindle lock screens and Fire TV home screens, where customers who are already in that Amazon ecosystem can really easily convert. I think it's compelling for brands that are in that later stage and saying, okay, we really need to build like mass and critical mass and market awareness. I think Amazon offers some really cool advantages over, the YouTubes and the Instagrams of the world for OTT.
Right. And so then your clients then ask, so you want us to buy a TV ad? And I'm sure there must be a natural sense of, whoa, we're the young emerging startup. We're not buying TV ads. It's really compelling in that what excites us a lot about OTT is that it allows any brand to be able to buy that Thursday Night Football ad, whereas they would never think about doing so on the TV, spending several $100,000s. But for the right price, that right eyeball might be a good fit for you. And it's been really interesting to see the maturation of several of our customers as we move up the funnel into OTT. And I know it's something that Amazon certainly thinks is really exciting, and they're going to only continue to double and triple down on that one. Cool. We're a little bit running out of time. If there are any questions, feel free to bring them here. We're happy to answer them over the next 10 minutes or so. I have to ask this, but given everything that's going on in the world, naturally, more and more people are buying food products in the age of coronavirus on Amazon, and there are fundamental new shifts in consumer behavior that are accelerating beyond anyone's wildest predictions. How are you coaching, whether that be existing clients or new clients, in taking advantage of this opportunity of hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of new consumers that wouldn't have otherwise been there in Q4 2019?
There's a few things that we consider. So one is, if you have traffic that's going to your listings, you don't want your ads to run out, right? It's really important that you're letting people find your products, especially if they're in that kind of like middle and bottom part of the funnel. Really important that you're allocating additional budget to make sure that you're getting your fair share and you're not losing share with the additional demand. The other thing that I think is really important is, John mentioned it earlier, we're in consumables and we think a lot about habit formation. And so you're not done with the first purchase. The big surge of new demand was in late March, early April for us. And, for a lot of products, your average consumption timeline is like a month or two, even 3 months. So now is the time to actually be thinking about those, that kind of consumption, getting those customers back and remarketing to them and making sure that they're building habits on Amazon. One trend that we saw that actually has been kind of contra to everything that we've seen in the media is we saw a pretty big demographic shift when there was a spike in demand in COVID in late March. 5 to 10 percentage points of total sales across a lot of our brands shifted to older demographics, 45 plus through 65 plus. And so, rightfully so, there was a lot of chatter in the market about, big acceleration of e-commerce, changing behaviors, all that. We've actually seen a walk back. Those demographics have shifted back to the younger age groups. And so, I think it's important for brands to be monitoring how their consumers are changing because,
and just a quick interruption, Chris, where does this data come from? How are you checking this data?
Yeah, so in Amazon's brand analytics dashboard, which is their new version of ARA, it should be available to just about any brand now. You can look at demographics of purchasers. You can see age, you can see income levels, gender, geographic location. And I think there's some interesting insights, especially. Yeah, you just have to be brand registered. And so there's some really interesting stuff on especially if your sales had a big spike, and most brands have had some pretty unusual sales activity. What's actually driving this? It helped us answer the question, was it people stocking up or was it net new purchasers? And we actually determined it was almost all net new purchasers. But was interesting to see that in the last month, a lot of those net new purchasers haven't really come back, or they at least haven't come back yet.
Got it. Cool. We have a question. And this is a little biased. I'm not sure if anyone seeded this question from the Perpetua team, but the question is they'd like to know how Perpetua's DSP service, besides the lower cost of entry for advertisers, sets them apart in your view.
John?
Sure. So sure. So, and Adam, I guess I'll frame this specifically around your managed service offering.
Correct.
So, I mean, we think the team that we work with at Perpetua, I think, are really fantastic partners. DSP is a really different animal than Amazon pay-per-click. The back-end platform to access it, Rodeo and others are just almost infinitely customizable, and there's a much steeper learning curve and more complexity. And so I think even for us as a very experienced agency, but certainly for any brand that doesn't have somebody in-house to manage this for them, having a really experienced partner who would take the time to understand your business, your category, your landscape, provide data transparency, I think is really powerful. Also, I think on the reporting and analytics side, one of our frustrations, I've been running DSP in some format since 2013, 2014 with AMG early days, and the data and reporting was always really frustrating and limited and Excel based. And the fact that we can now see that through a beautiful UI in the Perpetua app on mobile, on computers, we can export those data sets for easy analysis and manipulation, I think is great. So I'd say it's the combination of really great, thoughtful in-house expertise who are stewarding that spend as a true collaboration with the brand, combined with really cool reporting tools that I think significantly elevate the value that brands get out of DSP. Those would be my two. Chris, do you have any others?
Daily line item reporting. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. I had to do a little switch.
You're going into the line items, Chris.
Daily line item reporting. It's just like a huge game changer. Like it mentioned before that people have this kind of antiquated view of DSP, and it was because, like John said, barrier to entry was super high. Cost was high. So unless you were willing to hand Amazon a check for 20 grand a month or even higher in some cases, you didn't start it. And then on top of that, you didn't really know what was happening because Amazon didn't have a good reporting interface. And so a lot of your reporting was dependent upon your advertising person, kind of one-off spreadsheets that you probably only got weekly if you're lucky, sometimes monthly. And so Perpetua has daily line item reporting, which is every sub-campaign has a line item and performance daily. So your retargeting, your remarketing, your competitive conquesting. One of my favorite channels is actually consumer past views who have not yet made a purchase. Often those are the people strongest in the consideration phase and not yet committed to a competitor, and those tend to convert really well. So you can see all of those differently, competitor past purchases versus competitor past views, and then even more of your top of funnel stuff. And so on a daily basis, you're able to, I think the name of the game with DSP is just experimentation, and you can test your hypotheses and see if your strategies are working.
Cool. Yeah, we call that target market reporting, where we aggregate all the line items and you can see how the strategy is doing across all of the ASINs within a portfolio or the individual ASINs on that one strategy. One thing that I would add that I think you guys did a really good job of working with our DSP team on is focusing on incrementality and ensuring that DSP ads do not cannibalize what would otherwise be an organic sale. So putting heavy restrictions on retargeting, heavy restrictions on lapsed purchases, so that you can leave room for that organic sale to occur. But when you determine that that customer is effectively gone, how you can bring them back into the funnel is one of the things that I think was really impactful in our learning of the DSP and some of the work that we've been able to do with your clients. So I have one last question. I think we're at for the Q&A from the audience, but I have one last question that I'm going to ask everyone on the summer session series. Everyone loves to talk predictions when it comes to Amazon. So give me one prediction for Amazon in the next calendar year, not calendar year, in the next 365 days.
All right, John, you go first. I got to think about this.
I think I would say 70% probability or greater that Amazon launches a Pearl Harbor style attack on the grocery industry and buys a major grocer, like a Target.
That isn't Whole Foods, but rather
that isn't Whole Foods, a mainstream grocer like Target, or makes a retail storefront play to buy a company like Kohl's or even JCPenney, which has a lot of prime real estate right now available for pennies on the dollar, that they turn into hybrid in-person Amazon stores and grocery depots.
Cool. Chris, what do you got?
That's way more interesting than anything I was thinking of. I mean, I was going to say like ads are getting more expensive, but that's not a prediction. That's definitely happening. Yeah, the whole kind of retail apocalypse did throw a lot of wrenches in Amazon's plans. They were doing a bunch of retail stuff. Yeah, what I'm most interested to see is growth of their cold supply chain. I think that there is now enough, like pre-COVID, all of Amazon's perishable platforms, everyone knew about them and virtually no one used them because there wasn't a lot of consumer demand, but that's changed a lot, right? Like Instacart is now huge, and Amazon Prime now, Whole Foods delivery, and Amazon Fresh are kind of like analogs. I think that there's a chance that we actually see real organizational gas behind those efforts. They might consolidate, and then you might actually see integration into the .com in some way, because now those, I'm sure what they're seeing is that the frequency of purchase and the size of the baskets are going up a lot, and just the plain consumer demand has gone up a lot. That, I think Amazon's going to build a lot more tools to do perishables online, because we do perishables right now, but it's really hard, and it's you basically have to have a $30+ offer to even be profitable to do it across the US. unless you're in one of those programs, which had their limitations. So I think that's my prediction, is that perishables will go national or bigger in the way they haven't been before.
Got it. So the emerging natural food guys have predictions associated with grocery and food. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But that's the way it should be, right?
Well, and it's worth noting. I mean, if you look at, if you accept the premise that Amazon is attempting to become the world's largest retailer. If you look at the actual GMV value of merchandise of products sold through Walmart and through Amazon, if you look at it ex grocery, Amazon passed Walmart in 2018. So ex grocery, Amazon is a bigger retailer than Walmart, which is I think, staggering fact. But Walmart is still so much bigger than they are in terms of GMV volume, and that's all grocery that's driving it. And Amazon, in order to continue to win, has to conquest in grocery space. I mean, there's a reason that they are continuing to experiment, and they're throwing all these darts at the board to see what sticks, and then they're consolidating programs and rolling them together and acquiring, and they've got 3 different grocery store formats, and they're not going to stop. They can't.
It's one of the fundamental theses of Cartograph to begin with. But Adam, I sincerely hope that someone comes on this and says like drones or like antitrust and like say goodbye to web services.
Yes, that will be interesting. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Awesome to work with both of you. I'm excited to see Cartograph grow and your brands grow. And thank you once again.